All right, we're away. Pod 7. Yeah, I was counting in the countdown then. Yeah, we're just chatting quickly off air again. Com Games, Melbourne, cancellation. Dan Andrews. Moron in a nutshell.
Dan Andrews couldn't organise a couple of toddlers to inside a chocolate shop. Everything he touches turns to trash.
Has he become one of the most hated politicians at the moment, or what?
If he isn't, people haven't been paying attention, because the guy is a dead set imbecile, mate. You wouldn't hire this bloke to butter your bread. He's as dumb as they come, and they had one of the best guys ever that built Victoria with Jeff Kennett. You know, the stuff he did, and for him, he must be sitting there watching this guy going, mate, how can you get it so wrong? Like, it's just...
I know economically over the years, they've been so strong for so long, Victoria.
They have.
Given the fact that New South Wales, you know, always been the biggest state and the glamour state of the world, or the glamour city of the world, Sydney. Yeah. And then Victoria, we're just, as you said, Kennett just built that city so well.
He did.
But, and I haven't followed it for a long time, but all I know is that when I was in the US during COVID, the amount of texts and emails that I was getting from friends, particularly my sister, about this whole lockdown and what they did to them down there. People just obviously started leaving the state, just saying this is ridiculous. But,
oh, my God, in droves. When I was down at my mum's place, you know, which is just north of the Victorian border, they were flooding out. All you saw was Victorian number plates flooding out of the state. And now tens of thousands of them are up here on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
There's enough of him. He's just an absolute imbecile. I mean, the fact that he's left everyone in the lurch, you know, and just come out of nowhere and gone, yeah, we don't want to do it anymore. I don't know contractually what he's liable for, because they signed onto it.
That's what I was thinking yesterday when I sent you that note. And you wrote back to me saying, "Oh, we've all heard this," and I thought, "Oh, you know, must be a little bit of old news." But now you're just saying you didn't realise they'd actually cancelled it altogether.
No, I had heard that they were having problems regionally, and they may bring it back to Melbourne. But then Athletics Australia came out after we'd spoken and made a statement, said, "No, they're canning the whole thing. It's done." So. It's just a complete debacle. And Andrews, you know what, if he had, they won't, because politicians never do, but if he had any sort of shred of, you know, respect for himself, he'd just resign.
Yeah. But they need to change down there. How he got back in, I don't know.
I know. But he's taken Victoria backwards, not forward.
So they're talking about the budgets. I think their initial budget was like, you know, $2.5 billion, and now it's actually blown out to somewhere between 6 and 7 billion. Sorry about that. Should have turned the phone off.
And it probably won't even be that. It'll probably be that. Which regionally would be a disaster. They'd never get it back. They'd build all these facilities and all in places like Ballarat and Bendigo and elsewhere, and then it'd end up like that the bobsled run in Sochi.
Yeah.
Overgrown and graffitied.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but I've seen others around the world bobsled tracks.
Look it up. It's just overgrown with trees and graffiti.
I'm going to bring that up right now.
That's what happens.
Yeah, too funny.
So
I was supposed to go there.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So yeah, sort of crazy. I hadn't really followed the Com Games down in Melbourne and, you know, where they were going to put the facilities and stuff. But, yeah, I'm just having a quick look now. There's there's no overgrown photos that I can find. Yeah, there's no photo. It's not showing any photos of the track, the current track.
They're out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, here we go.
Can you see it?
Oh, no, this is just an abandoned games venue. Let me see if I can.
There's plenty of them around, and that's not the only place in the world where this has happened. Yeah,
let me. Is this the one you're talking about?
That's still just coming up.
Yes, it's trying to load there. But yeah, so that's interesting about Victoria trying to run a Com Games and regionally. But that's one track.
Yeah, well.
That's Beijing, I think.
Yeah, and this is where they end up. This is what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Multi-million dollar facilities go into rack and ruin. And this
Yeah,
is what countries like, many countries still paying for these events many, many years after it. I mean,
long after, yeah, for sure.
we got a bit of a rap for the 2000 Olympics because we went close to break even.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a rap for that because that's never been, you just don't break even.
And at least that facility is still now used. It's become, a major hub.
Yeah.
The women's soccer's on there next week. Obviously, the athletic track is still there. They've reconverted the actual Olympic stadium, but that's used for the rugby all the time.
Yeah.
So that whole facility out there, not that I love it because it's a little bit far away, but it's a good facility when you look at it as a whole.
And it's even changed. I mean, I was at SOPAC in March, and it had changed since I'd last been there. There's so much more stuff there now. It's a real hub, sporting hub in central part of Sydney.
And it is central, very central.
Very central.
For Sydney.
Yeah, so tons of stuff is going on there. Even when I was there, our event was on there, but there was tons of other events all simultaneously going on. They've made a success out of that region, out of that area of Sydney.
Yeah,
and they've made a success out of a lot of the stuff they put here for the Commonwealth Games in 2018 on the Gold Coast because there's so many people here and it's such an outdoor place. Is that all the facilities up here are still being utilised?
Yes,
because so many people up here enjoy an outdoor lifestyle. So that's been successful.
I was just looking up the headline: Victoria cancels Commonwealth Games to see what's popping up today. But 22 minutes ago, there's a story that Victoria's still hopeful.
I don't know what hope's left.
No, either do I.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they actually do? I mean, as you said, contractually, I wonder what they've committed to.
Yeah, you wouldn't know, but he might be looking down the track and say, well, if it's going to cost us $500 million to get out of it, it's better than dropping 7.
Of course, and that's exactly what they'll do, mate. Yeah. Given they've had such a horrid few years down in Victoria financially, and I think they've gone into a substantial deficit at the moment. So I think that's exactly what he would do.
Yeah, terrible. But but he's going to lump another $500 million or whatever the get out clause is on the taxpayers of Victoria.
Is there a governing body for the Com Games, like the Olympic body?
Yeah, there is. So I don't know. I think Steve Monaghetti is in charge of that.
For Australia or globally?
For Australia. I don't know globally, but I think he's the one that sits in there. And he may not have had much of a heads up either. He may have been told no sooner than the rest of Australia found out.
Yeah.
It's typical of Andrews not to really divulge much and just come out and say something really stupid.
It's interesting what we were just saying off air about that the Commonwealth Games has become a little bit of a non-event these days anyway. I mean, Commonwealth countries, seriously.
I think it'll die.
As a I'll say a non-athlete, but as an athlete, I suppose that you can't compete at that absolute world level. Going to the Com Games is still a big thing. But for most athletes, I think that, like even Australian athletes, and I'm speaking, generalising here, that if you're an international Australian athlete, is it really something you want to do, go to the Com Games?
No.
I wouldn't think so either.
It isn't. Because most good athletes are going and competing in Diamond League and other things. It's like all the peanut heads are here in Australia that go up to the Great Barrier Reef Games in off-season, win a medal and come home and call themselves geniuses.
Yeah.
And they've run 62 seconds for a 400 and win. And then go, how good am I? And everybody knows you're no good. So why? I mean, it's just stupid. As I say, there's athletes that would rather win a B race in a terrible time than come last in an A race in a first class time. And those athletes aren't curable. Like they're always going to seek out events that they can get a medal in or a place, even though the times are rubbish.
I get the process from an athlete. I mean, if you were an athlete that is not quite at the top of the tree, but can go at least to a major event and go through that, whole preparation, you get to actually compete at, potentially amazing stadiums and so forth. But I think it has lost a lot of its luster over the years for a lot of people because there is so many, world competitions that even the individual sport, like if you're, I don't know if do they have soccer at the Com Games?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but let's say, but as a soccer player representing Australia, do you really want to play at the Com Games or in the World Cup?
Yeah. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer, right?
In the world, other than England, are really not in the Commonwealth.
No, exactly. So you're right. It's become a little bit of a non-event for most people.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. I don't know what they'll do about it, but obviously the cost, and it's too small. I mean, that's probably why the cost burden. You've still got to build the same stadium that you got to build for the Olympics, right? But you probably have, a quarter or, a quarter of the people actually attend, in terms of audience.
It's the Australia, England, Canada show, and then everybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the point of that? They're going to take the lion's share of every single event, and I mean every event, and all the rest of them are just making up the numbers. So it's just not worth the interest. And I've got no problem with people going to events because they want to compete and they want to enjoy it and this, that, and the other, and that's fine. But don't run around the country saying you're a super athlete because you have a placing in an event that no one turned up to.
Yeah.
Because that's what people do up here is they come home and they plaster it all over social media and say, oh, look, I'm a gold medalist.
Yeah.
Then you say, oh, what time did you run? No, I'm telling you that.
But I think it's also just the cost to actually build, this type of an event across so many sports. It just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Well, anyway, Andrews, and you can criticise him, I guess, but I guess that what the only criticism I'd have for him, it's not a secret how much these things cost. How'd you get this far into it before you figured it out?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like this has been going on for decades, and yet all of a sudden people sort of wake up and go, wow, didn't know it was going to cost this much.
Yeah, how long ago did they actually win the Com Games? I actually don't know.
It was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's normally a few years, isn't it?
It's not like they won it last week and then went, oh, hang on, guys, we're just not going to be able to do this.
And when are the Com Games? It's supposed to be 2026, 25?
Yeah, so 26 or something.
26, yeah.
26 or 27, something like that. I think Paris is on in 26 for the Olympics. So
it should be before that then.
Yeah, Budapest World Champs are on next year, I think.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it, but I don't know. I don't even follow the Commonwealth Games.
No, I don't either.
And the last Commonwealth Games was on. I didn't even watch it.
No, I couldn't even tell you where it was.
No, it was the last one that I heard about. I think Birmingham was the last one, or Manchester, or somewhere. But I didn't watch that, and I didn't even watch the Gold Coast one, and I live here.
Yeah,
so I didn't watch that. So if I'm not watching it, there's plenty. It's like that's a problem.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Because I sit in that bubble.
Yeah.
So,
anyways, what else you got?
Yeah, just getting a lot of questions this week. Obviously, we've got district competition coming up for all the high schools here in Queensland, and that's the first tier before they head off to regionals and then get selected for states. And I'm getting a lot of questions about nutrition, diet, what to eat, what not to eat before events, after events, and just general nutrition. I come from a very, I think nutrition's a bit of an anomaly in terms of there's a lot of grey out there with nutrition. And so I approach it from this angle as you got your base science about what nutritionally works well as a general rule. And then we have everybody's individual physiology, which sometimes requires more of something and less of something else. So I take it from what do we know works, and then what specifically, because you've had a few goes at it and you've tested a few things, what really works for you. And I also take the opinion that you shouldn't be on any supplements at all unless you have a deficiency that's been diagnosed, so you need a supplement, or you've been having blood tests that clearly show you're deficient somewhere.
Yeah.
Because you will get 99% of everything you require from the food you eat. And most of the time, people spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplements are just flushing it down the toilet.
Yes, I do agree. I think the problem is today that not everybody's getting the required food they need.
They're
And I
not.
think because of the lifestyle for a lot of people out there today is just so on the go all the time. So, but you're right, even people taking supplements, someone said to me the other day, because I've actually keep getting a bit of a sore throat, but from just, I think, being in the office and public transport, am I taking vitamin C? And, people just actually go off and take these particular things. They've got no idea if they've got a deficiency or not. So,
No.
have I? I don't know. But, yeah.
Well, it's become so cultural for us to take stuff. Like, if there's anything wrong with you, for sure, people go. I mean, I even do it now, and I don't even know. Like, if I think I've got a hard session or I'm feeling a little bit sore, I'll go and take magnesium.
Yes.
That might stop me cramping up a bit. Now, it might not. And unless I've done a blood test, I may not be deficient in magnesium at all.
Yeah.
And I get blood tests really regularly. And the only thing I've really noticed that I've been a bit low on from time to time is iron, and simply because I don't eat a lot of red meat,
Mm-hmm.
the rule. And then I might start eating a bit more red meat or something like that. My iron goes back up again. So, but at the end of the day, if you're not actually doing screening and blood tests, you're just guessing, and you're probably wasting a lot of money.
For sure. Yeah, I went through that when I was younger. I just spent so much money on supplements,
Oh.
but they've done such a great job of marketing to us. That's exactly what they've become. Just multi-million-dollar marketing companies.
It's crazy. And one of the funniest things I ever saw, I wish I had a video of it or I had a picture. It was actually in DY down in Sydney. I saw a guy walking out of one of those, those vitamin discount stores with a tub of whey protein, massive gain, and he would have weighed 60 kilos.
Yeah.
Like, he was struggling to carry this tub of stuff over the highway. And you just throw your hands up and you go, mate, it doesn't, you can eat that stuff all day long. It's just, you're kidding.
Yeah, and then I see people the same thing that are overweight and they're walking around with their mass gainer or their protein. I'm like, dude, you don't need more protein. Well, you potentially do, because protein it will actually help you lose weight. Yeah, because if you actually have enough protein, your body actually feels so much fuller, so much more quickly.
Yeah.
And there has been some tests done around that, and I've even recommended to a few people, if you're struggling to actually lose some weight, have 50 grams of protein first thing in the morning, and you will probably find it helps. But look, I've taken 3 supplements. I've upped my protein intake through a powder at the moment, only because I realised when I analysed my diet a while back, the amount of protein that I need to consume, I actually couldn't get enough in food. So I've started supplementing to get up to that 200 grams a day, which is what I was trying to take. And the only 2 other things that I take is vitamin D. And I have had some tests done before. My vitamin D levels are very good, but when I look back over history, I didn't test for vitamin D. They weren't low, but they were on the lower side.
Yeah.
And it is technically globally known now that majority of people have a vitamin D deficiency.
Yep.
And creatine. And I don't have the science. There's enough science around creatine to say there's evidence that it actually really works. But if there's one thing I've always felt that actually has helped me, is creatine.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I do have a tub of creatine, but I don't take it regularly, but I do take it around competition or very, very heavy training sessions. Now, does it help? For me specifically, I don't know. But most things become psychosomatic with me and a lot of athletes. It's whether it helps or it doesn't help. I go through a process of things that I eat and drink, and it's more that, well, if you don't do it, your head's in a space.
Yeah.
You'll convince yourself you've performed badly, whether you did or you just, and so it's a really difficult thing. And weight loss is a completely separate issue. Like, taking things for weight loss versus taking something that's performance based is completely different.
Yeah. The thing about creatine that I do know about it, and I've got a few big papers on it, which I haven't read completely, that you do need to progressively take creatine over a fixed period of time. And there was some theories around you needed to high dose on it for 5 days, because it does load your cell and your body needs to build it up in its system. So taking it just for a one-off session typically doesn't do anything. You need to actually use it over a long period of time. And I will say, if I really focus on taking creatine, I take it pretty much every day at the moment, it has a bit of fluid retention,
Yes.
but I will find overall that I look fuller just as a person when I'm taking it all the time. But there's enough evidence and science around creatine. I even read something the other day by someone really well known, and they said if there's one supplement that has now got a lot of science around it and strong evidence to say that it's beneficial, was creatine.
Yeah, and that could very well be the case. And I'm probably not even, and that's another topic altogether, is whether you use these supplements correctly and how they're supposed to be used. I mean, these are all the variables that I haven't spent enough time in, and I can't say conclusively one way or another. But I just know that if I'm competing, and this is what people do because we're patent-seeking mammals, is that if you do something and something works, then you just join the dot. You know, oh, I ran a really good time today and I took creatine. That's why. And or stop doing it again.
And or if someone else ran a really good time and you want to know what they're doing, they say, well, I take creatine and vitamin C. You can bet your bottom dollar that person is going to buy creatine and vitamin C straight away.
I know just with the squad that I'm with, if I tell them anything, because some of the times I've run, they'll just go and do it.
Yeah.
You know, even from shoe, like I've talked about the technology in the new Nike shoes, they're all got them now. I told some of the parents, they'd said to me, oh, Chris, what do you run? I said, oh, I run in these and this is what I run. Next week, they're all got them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that.
Yeah.
It's I think our brains are hardwired to join dots where we have little or no reason to do it or evidence. We just, as I said, and I've said this many times, it's the anti-bear rock that Lisa Simpson sold to Homer. You know, she said, you know, if you have this rock, you'll never be attacked by a bear.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow, how does it work? And she said, well, do you see any bears? And he goes, no. I said, right. And she, I'll give you $50 for it. You know, that's the way our brains are wired.
Yeah, and it's become even worse today with social media. We figure that, you know, someone sees something on social media today on Instagram, and automatically we go off and actually buy that person's product. You know, my sister said to me some time ago that there's someone on social media she follows down in Melbourne, and she was promoting a particular shampoo. So she went and bought it straight away.
Yeah.
You know, and she's got no idea whether it's the right shampoo for her, just because this particular person used it. And that's my sister, who's, you know, a little bit older, and, you know, she's not a dummy. So, yeah, we're so influenced by it today. But
well, it is. It's like, you know, when everyone's saying about abs and got to get abs and 6-minute abs and all this, and the people that advertise that and they show the bodies that have got these abs and say they sitting around watching Netflix all day, you know, drinking smoothies, and they don't do anything else.
yes.
Those people are in the gym 6 hours a day. They just don't tell you that.
Yeah, I walked past some sort of skin health shop. It's on the way to work, and they've got, you know, a special on at the moment, $99 to melt fat away with some, you know, handheld freezing thing, body sculpting and fat freezing.
Ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah.
But so getting off topic here, and we'll go down the rabbit hole again. Nutrition, like what are you talking to athletes about nutrition wise? Well, typically, what do you have before your race?
Before I race, I mean, because of my events, I'm running 200s and 400s. I typically won't have much beforehand. I'll usually have, you know, I'll have a cup of coffee, crumpets, jam, maybe a banana, particularly for a 400. But this is quite a few hours before.
Sure.
The night before, I'd load up with carbs. I'll have spaghetti and meatballs or something like that, because I like those carbs. For me in a 400, I just feel if I don't do it, I feel quite flat. So that I do that. It doesn't translate for ones and twos. I don't need to carb up for ones and twos. I need to just I don't really have a much of a change of diet for any of my events, but I really do try and eat soon and well after an event, and protein to repair. Like I will have nuts and banana and milk and with oats, and mix up something like that and have eggs. I'll really get several sources of protein into me after events, and I find that recovers me quite well.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of science around, the whole carbohydrate thing. And obviously your energy system typically doesn't need carbohydrate when you're running shorter distances,
No.
even 400s.
Yeah, you can get away with it.
I think for sprinting and for my, recollection when I ran, I think the more difficult thing around eating for sprinting was when we had multiple events on one day, is fueling yourself nearly enough in the morning to actually get through the entire day. Because I know, particularly when it was warmer and I had 3 or 4 races on one day, plus your 40-minute warm-up and so forth, I never really felt like eating between events.
No.
So all of a sudden you find yourself, you've gone, nearly an entire day and you've raced 3 or 4 times and warmed up 3 times at 45 minutes at a time. So it nearly becomes a sprint event, but an endurance day. And I found myself struggling to work out what to eat over the entire day because I didn't feel like eating between those events.
Yeah, and I'm the same. And weirdly, if I have to have a lot of rounds, say in a day or even over a couple of days, during the day, I just end up eating bananas and chocolate. I know.
Yeah. I would do the same though. That would be similar to me, just things things that you can actually process quite quickly.
Yeah, and give you a real big pickup quickly, get through a round, and then I'll go home and I will have a big meal after it's all said and done. I got so ravenously hungry I could go and eat quite a lot of food.
Yeah.
So but the thing is as well, it's a matter of finding that balance. I mean, the science is in on a lot of it. We know the science, but the thing is, people find things that suit them, that they feel comfortable with, and that they can produce results from.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not always necessarily this is the best thing for you, because you have to also deal with your brain that's telling you if you do something, that's bad, or if you don't do something, that's bad too. And whether it is or it isn't sometimes isn't relevant. It's almost like, when you go to do an event, everything, if your head's telling you something negative about what you're about to do, that's going to influence your performance.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as much as not eating or eating something that you hadn't done before. It's just going to have the same effect.
I've got the challenge coming up at the moment with this High Rocks event I've been training for. So obviously my training's it's interesting. It's an endurance event, but it's so metabolic because at the moment I'm probably sitting, I think I'm going to probably end up being 90+% heart rate for the entire race.
Wow. How long would that last?
Hour and 20.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you're in that. I'm going to be somewhere between. I'm going to say 85 to 92, 93% for that period of time.
What number would
I'm probably going to sit around 175.
Okay, it's getting up there.
Yeah, I'm maxing at the moment about 185 is my heart rate, my max heart rate. What's interesting, I'm actually really looking at my heart rate at the moment to get my overall cardio fitness up so I can recover somewhat between each individual station. As I said, we've got to do these 8 stations and run 8 kilometers as well. I went for a run last night, ran 7Ks last night, and my heart rate is slowly coming down. It's dropped for that same distance at the same speed. In the last 2 weeks, it's come down 10 beats. So I've gone from 156 to 144 last night to run the same distance at the same speed, which, so my zone 2 base has actually started to get better. And I'm doing 45 minutes on the bike of only 120 heart rate now, and I'm finding it's really helping. It's funny. It doesn't feel like it's helping. You're riding so slow and in this really low zone, but all the evidence points to, it's the Tour de France riders. They go out and just have really long rides, 3 and 4 hours at really low heart rate days to build that base.
But you need to do that.
You need to, yeah. But what's interesting is thinking about how I fuel for this event, because it's going to be an hour and a half. It's so metabolic that your heart rate's going to go through the roof, but it's not like a 400 to 1 off. I'm going to keep my heart rate there. So I don't want to eat, obviously, too early before that event because it's just going to make me feel terrible. But I've got to eat enough in the morning and let that digest to fuel me enough to get through that event at the same time so I don't hit the wall. I've found my eating in the morning at the moment, and I have about a 900 calorie breakfast at the moment every day. It's big, yeah. So, but that will get me through quite a long period of time. So I'm thinking at the moment for my event, and unfortunately, I'm in the middle of the day. I'm going to have a substantial breakfast, and then I'll probably just have a protein bar about an hour before, which will have a bit of sugar and carbohydrate in it, and then just fluid wise. But yeah, it's interesting, different eating for different events. And then I always going back to track. I always found after track, I remember some of the days we had. One of my worst days ever. I think I got a bit of heat stroke at Narrabeen. It was so hot, and going back to that point before, often on the track all day for 45 minutes at a time, warming up. And I think it was a relay. I got home that night so dehydrated, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Because the heat off the track, and what a lot of athletes don't realise, non-athletes, when we're on the track, if you have a warm day, 35 degrees day, how hot that track temperature can actually be.
If it's 35, it's 40 on the track.
For sure.
We had, there was 2 days from memory. We had one was at Sopak when the hot westerlies were blowing, where they cancelled for kids, I think under 14 were all cancelled because they were putting their hands on the track and getting blisters from the heat, it was so hot. But I remember running down the back straight and I couldn't swallow. It was so dry and so hot. I think it was approaching 46 or 47. And we did it once when we ran those 5-200s.
We did.
I swear, that was the day that kid collapsed.
And throwing up.
It was 45 off the track.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was 9 o'clock that night. I went down to Freshwater for a swim at 9 p.m. and the beach was packed. And it was still 35 degrees at 9 o'clock at night. But I just remember that day vividly. I don't know what we were thinking, why we wanted to run 5-200s in 50-degree heat.
Because it was on my program.
It was. I can't believe we actually got through it.
We did.
And it was as hot as hell. I just remember that kid, he ran an 800 time trial.
He did.
The first lap, when he was coming around, he ripped his shirt off while he was still running through it. He's only 16, this kid, you remember?
Yeah.
His dad was coaching him. He got to the end, and, man, he threw up, and he was in real trouble.
He was in trouble. He had full heat meltdown.
He did. I was seconds from, we got to call an ambulance.
Yeah.
Get water down, nothing you did worked. It took him a good 20, 30 minutes to settle.
Yeah.
And that was the end of him. There was no more for him for the day. I think he ran very close to 2 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say he ran there 2 minutes, like a 2:01 or 2:02. Yeah, it was a good run.
It was a good run for in 50-degree heat. It was just insane. But
I think that's what a lot of people don't appreciate is that heat coming off the track when you're out on the track all day warming up. And I've had the same thing. I've had no fingerprints at the end of racing one day. I just had completely smooth fingers. All my fingerprints had actually just been rubbed off from the heat of the track. But yeah, definitely nutrition's an interesting thing, isn't it? It's and eating for particular races is tricky as well. But I think mine feels pretty good at the moment. I've dialed it in. I've changed a lot of my diet recently, given that when I say changed, I used to always have a little bit of chocolate and occasionally have some ice cream. I had some ice cream last night for the first time in probably 12 weeks. But I have been eating differently for this event. And also it's interesting that I'm probably eating enough calories for what I'm burning throughout the day, because I am burning a lot of calories. I noticed the other day, and the watches aren't completely accurate, but they will do some sort of calculation for you. So you're getting, again, if you've got that baseline and it's the same baseline all the time, that's all that matters, whether it's 50 or 100 calories out. But for one of these high rocks events, and I didn't complete the entire event the other day, I went through about 7 stations in the gym. I burnt 900 calories.
Yeah. Yep. And you've got to work pretty hard to burn 900 calories.
You do, as you know, you do.
Yeah, that's hard. I just know if I was on a cross trainer, I've got to go at 95% for 6 straight minutes, hard, really hard, to burn 100.
Yeah.
So that's how hard it is.
Yeah, I burnt through 900 calories, plus my normal metabolic rate for the day. So I'm sitting somewhere between, a big day I'll get through 2,800 calories of burn, and normally sort of probably 2,500 calories. Yeah. So, hence I get a lot of my calories first thing in the morning at the moment. And I never used to eat breakfast, or very little. I'd have 2 slices of toast for breakfast only. But I have to say that flipping that around a little bit and getting more of my volume of food in the morning, I found it's actually working for me. I feel much better for it. And again, I think the big change was, and what you were saying before about what you actually have in the morning. So I have 2 scoops of oats, so like a cup and a half of dried oats, yogurt, a little bit of oat milk, a scoop of protein powder, a banana, and berries and creatine in a bowl.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, but I find it's very digestible. I don't feel that full after it. And, I could probably go and run within 30 minutes to 45 minutes after having that. So I'm finding it's that for me has actually worked extremely well.
But just as a base statement, which I say to people who come from a place of not a lot of experience or using their reason about diet or nutrition, they ask me, well, what do I eat? And I'd say, well, just eat food. And then the next begs the question, well, what is food? And it's got to look like what it used to look like when it was either growing or walking around. If it doesn't, then it's not food. And just because it won't kill you immediately doesn't mean you should eat it. There's tons of stuff in supermarkets you should not eat. And it won't kill you, or not straight away. It will eventually. But so the definition of what should I eat, it's legitimate food. And food is found in the fruit and vegetable aisles of supermarkets, and in areas where when you look at it, if you see something that looks like a fish, it probably was, and it was swimming in the ocean, and you should
exactly.
Eat. So, if it doesn't look like a fish and it looks like a fish finger, because you don't find fish fingers in the ocean, they've processed that, and it may not be that good for you.
Here's the problem though, mate. And I know you and I can sit here and actually have this conversation, because we've been around this space for a very long time. And for the average person, not the average person, but for some people out there, I think that's part of the problem, that they've marketed these products so well that they are telling somebody that a fish finger is food.
Yeah, they are.
And people are believing that, right?
Of course they are. And they put all sorts of things on the packet that say to you, I even held up the guys in our squad bring, the Natural Confectionery Company, packet of snakes. They bring that to the track and everyone has 1 or 2 snakes at the end of training because it's a feel-good thing and everyone likes it. But interestingly, I held it up and yesterday at the track to see what sort of reaction I would get. And I said, do you see what's written on this pack? It says no artificial flavors or colors. So this is food. And it's a gelatin snake. It's not food. And, giving a couple of athletes after a, 12 or 13, 1400 meters of hard volume of snake is fine. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to do any damage. And it actually, for what it serves for them mentally, it's worth it. Because it has all these other benefits other than the fact that what they're eating is actually completely valueless other than a bit of sugar.
Yeah, well, I mean, you get some glycogen refueling out of it, though, so momentarily. And but I'm with you. There's no harm in it for the small volume that it is after a really hard track session for an athlete.
Oh, totally. But the problem is there's people walking around the street with their Nike shirts on that are 180 kilo, eating 10 bags of them a day.
Yes.
That's a problem. Yeah.
But where do we lose the concept of food? And I think it's a really interesting question to ask people, what is food? And I think most people would be offended by you asking them that question. They'd be like, oh, what do you mean? Do you think I don't know? But they don't know. I agree that they don't know.
I had someone say to me, is nachos food? And I went, when's the last time you set a trap and caught some nachos? Where do you see nachos out in the environment? It just what show me the nachos tree.
I was reading an article yesterday and I just popped it up in the background here, and it's I think it was the World Health Organization released its first ever global status report of physical activity, citing some dismal statistics urging intervention in governments across the globe. They're basically saying here that the lack of physical activity will cost the world economy $300 billion by 2030.
I'm surprised.
$300 billion of economic cost to the world.
I'm surprised that's all it is.
Yeah, and that they may not be able to measure that in some countries, right? can they get the data out of all their,
Yeah. If you look at the United States and our country and go and talk to medical professionals and ask them what is obesity costing our health system, mate, you won't shut them up about it.
No.
They're dealing with the effects of that every day, even to the point where we've got hospitals now having to fit out a lot of some of their wards with beds that can handle 245 kilo. Like, that's insane. But that's what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
Because and we track the United States pretty closely in terms of obesity levels. So, which is surprising for our country, given what an outdoor country we are, and but we actually do.
It is surprising. Over the years, we've just become exactly like the US.
It's crept up on us.
And the UK, yeah. And people still don't recognise or believe that. And again, we walk around in, areas where they're economically, a little bit better off, and you live in a climate where it is warm and outdoors. And, I had friends come up from Melbourne to Sydney, and they were staying over in Manly, and they couldn't believe how everyone was so fit. And I said, yeah, you've spent your weekend in a bubble over at Manly where everyone's at the beach every day and running and whatever else. I said, venture out west and see what's going on. But
go to Westfields, Liverpool, see what you see.
Yeah, exactly. But the cost to, the economy now is just, and growing, and it's not going to stop. It's
we actually lost the war. I said a decade ago, this battle's been lost. We're not.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just the way we've gone.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but that could be a conversation going forever.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you've got before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it for the day. I've got to go and contemplate, a fast session with this 14-year-old this afternoon. He's got to do 4 200s off 2 minutes in 27.5. So that'll hurt.
That'll hurt.
That'll hurt him. Yep.
2 minutes is a tough run.
Yep. He's an 8 runner and claiming that he's going to be able to run 2 minutes for 800 metres. And as you well know, I don't care who you are, that's moving.
Can he walk back in 2? Can he get there in 2 by walking, or he's got to jog?
No, he can walk back. We cut straight across.
Straight across, yeah.
Cut straight over and go. And, yeah, he's going to whinge and complain, and he whinges and complains about me because I won't run it. I'll only run 150 metres.
And I'll just quickly say, because we are on a pod, for anyone listening that doesn't understand what we're talking about there, the time to walk back from running at 200 metres to get back to 200 metre start is virtually 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you start to dawdle, then you need to technically jog the last 20 or 30 metres to get there on time.
Oh.
And if you're a strict coach, like you are and I was, that you have to go on that particular time. So it's either go straight across the middle and get there, or a very fast walk around the track.
Right. We don't risk athletes walking around. They'll dawdle. So it's straight across.
Yeah.
And if they dawdle, we know walk across, we'll make them stay and go from the 400 metre start. Stand still. Don't go anywhere. Run stagger to stagger from 400 to the 200 stagger and wait there as well. That's if they're dawdling. So, when you've got that short of time, it's actually daunting for athletes, because normally when you're doing particular runs, your 145s or 300s, let's say, even if you're running 3s, you've got a 100-metre walk, and if you've got a 3-minute break, you get to stand there for 2 minutes and recover and just, collect your thoughts. But when you're doing those 2s off short breaks, you get there and you're looking at your clock and you've got 3 seconds and you've got to go again. It's horrible. It's actually mentally destructive.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
I actually find myself struggling to cope mentally. It's just one of those things, and you can't focus on anything but exactly what you're doing in that moment and not anything beyond it. And then you just take it one rep at a time, and you get to the end of it and you do it. You'll get it done, but oh my God, it's the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah, it's one of those tough sessions.
And you can't explain it to anyone. I'm telling this kid about how hard it's going to be. He's looking at me like, yeah, whatever. But I swear to God, he'll be lying there this afternoon, sucking his thumb, and he does. And like last session, he broke down, and started crying.
The thing is about kids that he will bounce back the following day.
Oh,
that's
he'd bounce back in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's the
So
nice thing about being a kid.
that's what
Like I ran 7Ks last night and had a massive session the night before in the gym, pushing 170 kilos on the sled. And my quads today, I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
They're smoked. I could hardly stand up.
Yeah. Like when we had a 250 metre session the other day in a hard one, my training partner, 400 metre training partner, rings me 3 hours later and says he's sitting on the lounge and he still hasn't recovered.
Yeah.
He was having he was seeing illusions. Like he was seeing things that he'd never seen before. Like he was having all these he was delirious. So yeah, that's what it does. And
For sure.
You've got to be in it. You can explain that to people; they think you're off your head, but you've got to be in it and experience it to understand it. But anyway, you'll find
good.
All right.
All right, that's a wrap. Until next week. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Hang on, I'm going to stop this.